I'm so pleased to welcome now Dr. Michael Brown. He's one of the most prominent evangelical leaders in the United States. You hear him across the United States on his radio syndicated program, The Line of Fire, which syndicates across a lot of the Salem stations. He's based in Charlotte. He leads the Coalition of Conscience, and he's the author of a brand new book, Donald Trump is Not My Savior. Trump is Not My Savior is available at Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere. Dr. Brown, welcome. You can tell I've got the Pittsburgh plague. I'm voice challenged this morning.
Oh, yeah, I've been there, done that on my radio show. You're a hero, man. Persevere.
You just got to push through. Tell us about Trump is Not My Savior, because part of the criticism of the evangelical community is that Donald Trump's conduct is sometimes not what one would expect from a person of faith.
Yeah, and they say, how can you as an evangelical support him? I voted for Donald Trump after opposing him in the primaries, so it's really simple. He's our president, not our savior. Our president gets our vote. Our savior gets our life. My testimony, my life, my credibility is not dependent on my vote for Donald Trump, and I will not bow down to the left-wing media telling me you must renounce any association with Trump before we listen to you, because they didn't listen to me before anyway. So we've got to put things in context. Politics is not the gospel. If you want to look at my Christian testimony, watch how I live, watch what I say, look at my family, look at my life. I vote for a president to do a certain job. It would be awesome if he was a great role model. And look, a lot of the hatred and the violent rhetoric right now, it's widespread. It comes from the radical left. The president needs to be more careful. I can differ with the president. He's not my savior, but he does get my vote and my support.
Yeah, I call balls and strikes on the presidents all the time. And I, however, get hit with silly arguments like you. Most recently, yesterday, Connor Friedersdorf at The Atlantic said, okay, Hugh Hewitt, you got your Supreme Court majority. Now you can blast Trump. And, my answer is come for the judges, stay for the military buildup. But more importantly, we need more judges like those that Donald Trump has nominated. We need more defense buildup. We need more economic growth. And I don't have to approve of everything he says or does to support him and vote him and hope he gets reelected.
Yeah, look, if you had a bunch of pit bulls on the loose with rabies biting children in elementary schools and they were getting sick and dying, and you had a appointed dog catcher, and you got one guy, the nicest guy in the world, happily married, doesn't use profanity, doesn't drink, but he can't catch a fly, and you got another guy, his ex-wives hate him, he's mean-spirited, nasty, profane, but he can catch a dog with his teeth, you elect that person as the dog catcher. So when it comes to the pro-life movement, who's going to do a better job, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? When it comes to fighting radical Islam and fighting against the genocide of Christians in the Middle East, when it comes to fighting for religious liberties, when it comes to pushing back against radical LGBT activism, go down the line, who's going to do a better job of that? Donald Trump. So there are things he does objectionable. I wish he wouldn't. I'll call him out on it while he has my vote, while he has my support. I don't understand why people can't make that distinction. Since when does our vote determine our entire moral character?
Of course it doesn't. It's a false choice. But it's an attempt to claim that evangelicals are hypocrites. And I want you to, you've said it, but I want you to do it again. It's the whole theme of Trump is Not My Savior, your new book. It is not hypocritical to be a devout evangelical of any stripe. I myself am evangelical, Roman Catholic, Presbyterian. You're a Pentecostalist, I believe. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're and observant Jews and Buddhists and Muslims, it doesn't matter what your religious faith is. It has nothing to do with how you govern yourself and choose the public man. Character counts, but what counts the most is how that character is manifested in action.
Yeah, and look, the day we stand before God in judgment, we're religious people, God is not going to say to us, what did you do with Donald Trump? That is not going to be the big question that's asked us on Judgment Day, but that's what's asked us every day by the left-wing media. And look, let's say Senator Ted Cruz was the man elected. Let's say he was more circumspect. Let's say there weren't a chance of lock her up at his rallies. Let's say he didn't praise a Republican congressman who body slammed a reporter. Do you think the left-wing media would be any less intense attacking him? And if we voted for him, we'd be accused, you want to set up a theocracy. You want to take over the country with Christianity. So the attacks are going to be just as extreme, and we can't play that game. Like you said, we've got to call balls and strikes. Our allegiance is to God and moral principles and what's right and wrong, and then we elect officials who can best carry out those things. It's a simple distinction. We have to repeat it over and over. It's true that the same people who were saying character matters in the days of Bill Clinton say, well, we're electing a president, not a pastor. There is hypocrisy when we excuse everything that Trump does, when we look the other way when he does wrong, there's hypocrisy there. But if we call things as they are and explain why we voted, then we don't have to bow down to the media's narrative.
Exactly. That's why when he says the enemy of the people is the media, I disagree with him, and I suggest he stop that when he attacks Mika Brzezinski for a facelift. I said, don't be cruel. I write that in the Washington Post. But I can still like what he gets done. I want to ask you about a bigger topic, Dr. Brown. If the president isn't my savior, and we know who our savior is, we still need men and women in the public square holding up the banner of the gospel. And I asked Dennis Prager and Michael Medved on Monday night in Pittsburgh, or Sunday night in Pittsburgh. I can't remember where I've been. The collapse of public Christianity is pretty complete. And Michael noted the passing of Dr. Graham as the last nonpartisan religious figure who could command the respect of everyone. Do you see any perspective for a revival of public Christianity?
Yes, I do. But it has to start in a grassroots way. To a certain extent, white evangelicals have been looked at as an appendage of the Republican Party, and it's a mistake we made before, say, with moral majority and things like that. We have to have a certain independence. We may vote a certain way, but we have to have a certain independence, almost as God's independent party. And if we can, on the ground, gain the respect of people, just like a lot of people didn't like Trump, but they're voting for him because the economy's better. When people in a neighborhood see Christians doing good and helping the poor, when Christians set good moral examples, when we're not beleaguered by every kind of scandal, I believe that there can be an amazing awakening. When you look back in American history, in the 1700s, there were religious leaders saying Christianity was expiring. It was breathing its last breath. 1800, it's reported that Chief Justice John Marshall said that the church has fallen too far to ever recover. April 1966, Time magazine, headline, Is God Dead? 5 years later, headline, The Jesus Revolution. So we've had dark spiritual times before. We've had spiritual ups and downs. I believe there can be an awakening, but it has to start on the grassroots. And then we need more prominent leaders who are not so associated with a party or with a candidate like Dr. Graham. And in that sense, we need to be a prophetic voice to the president as well as to society. I absolutely believe it's going to happen, but we've got to sort our way through this political minefield, A, and then B, have a grassroots revival on the ground where we live, get the respect of our communities. That will change the nation.
My last question for you, Dr. Brown, author of Trump is Not My Savior in bookstores everywhere. Do you pray for the media, even the liberal left-wing media?
Of course. These are not my enemies. Look, when I was 15 years old, I was a heroin-shooting, LSD-using crazy rebel caught up in the 60s rebellion. If God could have mercy on someone like me and change me, or you think of the people like Chuck Colson.
Oh, we lost you, Pastor.
Yeah, look, there is no reason not to pray. Change can come to anyone. Therefore, I pray for it and work for it.
Great to talk with you. Michael Brown, he is on. You can hear him on his radio show every single day. His brand new book is Trump is Not My Savior. It's at Amazon.com.